Let's pick up on something that you mentioned previously, which was this idea of working closely with people. And clearly that this is an emerging field, as are many of the others, like service design. People naturally talk and work together outside of projects. What's the way you go about that, and how do you think of that?
I think one of the interesting things for me around my network and the people that I work with in design is that I can kind of feel like I can sense my tribe quite quickly in terms of is this person more of a strategic designer or service designer or other kind of designer? And I think that's because there's some particular different qualities about each of them and about how they think about design in general and how they sort of experience the world in general, actually. For me, there's a little model in my PhD that I came out with, which is kind of focusing on some sense of human-centered design maturity. And there are kind of two key mindsets that come out within design, human-centered design. And that's, you think of design as a way of work, which is, it's kind of the process that I use to do things, and it's still human-centered and it's still empathic, but it's more done from a process-led, I guess, point of view, with the purpose being more for innovation and competitive advantage, compared to design as a way of life mindset, which is much more around the I want to do this and change the world, and it's all about creating positive, meaningful change. It kind of understands that it's much more empathic in its approach, and really just wanting to affect humanity in a good way. So, and it's a maturity kind of continuum, actually, that sort of happens if people want to go there along that line. So I think from my point of view, seeing those people who see it as a way of work compared to a way of life, can kind of see that within 10 seconds.
Yep.
And doesn't mean that, the quality of design is any better or worse, it's just the mindset that you bring to it. And I think strategic designers much more work in that space of way of life. I've never seen a strategic designer who just thinks of it as a way of work. In that way of work perspective, you'll see kind of more novice human-centered designers in general, but you'll often see that's where more of the product designers can sit, and some of the more, I guess, customer experience designers even sit in that space.
More focused on the outcome rather than a larger picture.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
And for people in that large picture area or the lifestyle area, the way of life area, are there ways of sustaining that?
Yeah, it's actually a model that I've been evolving lately. So to get back to that, to what I said in week one around it's that balance between frustration and wanting to change the world all the time. That's very much kind of a way of life perspective. And I think when people are in that mindset, they're often quite intense about the work and quite passionate, and that causes that yin-yang to kind of happen. I've kind of evolved the model now to have an extra step, which is kind of design as a way of being. And in that way of being, it's an acceptance of all of the things that you can't actually change, and just doing the work for the love of the work and not letting, I guess, those frustrations get in the way. But that's kind of like a whole extra level of maturity. And I see a few people in this space, and I feel like, I guess, my key strategic designers in my network are starting to transition into that. But we all go through that stage of, and a few years of that stage, through our own maturity of, we just want to change the world, and we're so frustrated that there's so many things getting in our way. But then, transitioning into that next mode is really interesting too.
That's a perfect segue into really the last question, which is about where you see the future of strategic design and this whole sort of bundle of different movements, I guess, going. You're clearly saying that there's a way of being, and that's going to not only influence designers, but may ripple out and influence other people. Have you got any insights or any sort of thoughts about where this might go? Yeah,
I think design is this kind of emerging discipline as a whole, right? Like, it's still only about 50 years old overall, and I think we've seen it just grow more and more strategic over that time. So, you know, you start with your product design and then you go into your industrial design, and now, you know, there was service design, which is more holistic again, and heading up to strategic design. So there is that sense of design is growing into a higher and higher strategic level, yep. and tackling bigger and bigger scales of problems and opportunities. Which is really exciting, and you know, and as that designers are growing into those spaces at the same time, I think for me what's really important is, you know, there are some designers who still think that design is allowed to have a seat at the table and just it deserves that. Yeah. But I think in some ways we're still at the point of proving that, because we don't necessarily still have either the business language or way of working to create those compelling things that give us that seat at the table all the time. So, I think that we need to prove ourselves more still, and show the value of design more still. I think also there's that sense of that other side where designers think that they're the ones who have to change the world, and I think we need to partner up and collaborate a lot more and become a lot smarter and wiser about how we really create those transdisciplinary teams to actually solve the problems. We can't do everything on our own. We actually need it to be transdisciplinary if we want to work on the things that we want to work on.
Which is another design project, really, isn't it? Designing the teams that work to design the other aspects of it.
Absolutely. And I think in terms of language at the moment, I'm starting to see business design thrown around quite a lot, and I think that's almost going to be the general language that will be used for strategic design instead. There seems to be that point where business design is the language that's being used to say we need to actually design the business, the whole organisation in a new way, and that's allowing design to enter into new, really fascinating, interesting places.
And are you seeing cracks in the thinking of business people, accepting that design might have a place there?
Cracks in good ways?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the field is just exploding at the moment, and I think the key thing that we need to be really aware of is that there are so many different design type terms being thrown around that we need to make sure that we're not cannibalising ourselves, and also having clear articulation and language to help other people understand what we do and the nuances between all of different fields as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. That's been a fantastic overview and also a really deep view of this area. What I get out of it is this sense that it's full of passion and growth, which I think is great, and particularly interesting in this master's program where we're looking at people moving into that space. So really appreciate your insights, and thank you very much.
You're welcome.